Quickly, before the video starts, I streamed this live over at twitch.tv/ballisticren, where I also play games. I stream weekdays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, so come stop by and say hi. I can't wait to see you over there. Now on with the video. Mixtape is a cancer. Yeah, it is. There's literally no likable characters, and it's not even really that much of a game. Let's see what he has to say about it, though.
Cubes, can I be honest with you? I've got
No.
game movie fatigue. Year after year, we've got these game movie writers churning out some game movie slop, and I'm sick of it. First, they came for the AAA slop, and I said,
I mean, at least like the modern God of War actually has game mechanics to my knowledge. Like, I never played modern game of or God of War at all, really. But my understanding is that you at least can actually play this and, have a fail state and all that. But yeah, that's the problem. Every movie or every game is becoming more like a movie. It's getting more cinematic, more cutscenes, longer cutscenes. Like 60% of the game is cutscenes and basically a movie. And it's like, that's not a game. That's just an interactive movie at that point. Or, well, at some point. I'm not sure if you consider God of War anything like that. But anyways, let's continue.
Everything. Like, really, you could not shut me up if you tried. Then they came for our childhood, and I started a war. I'm about to tear Mixtape apart in a few minutes. I don't care what they say.
Again, at least those are still, games. There's still, game mechanics to it. There's no game mechanics. It's just an interactive movie. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Like, if you want an interactive story and that's basically all you want, fine, fair enough. But first of all, at that point, just make it a movie. But second of all, I mean, it's not a game. But because I think when I looked it up the studio, the publisher, they also published the one game, again, more of an interactive movie. That one, What Remains of Edith, whatever. And again, and that was actually because I remember watching, playthroughs of that as on YouTube before, and I think if I remember correctly, it's actually good. Unlike this, you actually sympathize with this cursed family that struggles, tragedies, and all that time and again. And yeah, like, but again, at the end of the day, even these good products are still basically just movies. So could have just made it a movie and called it a day.
Let those game movie actors watch. I like that. Now we've reached the last bastion of gaming, indie. This was always supposed to be your safe harbor from AAA god.
Yeah, because indie games, well, first of all, that's a great thing about indie games. Indie games don't have the budget to hire voice actors to make these complex cutscenes and all that. So these indie creators are actually, forced or compelled, or depending on your perspective and the developer's perspective as well, they're compelled to prioritize gameplay. I think that's why indie games are killing it right now, more or less, while AAA studios are more often than not failing because it's just these 40-minute cutscenes with 10-minute gameplay in between that isn't really that much of gameplay other than like maybe shooting some things or something like that. And meanwhile, like Lethal Company doesn't really have cutscenes. Repo doesn't really have cutscenes. All the other big indie release, Peak, no cutscenes. The one about the game digging a hole, no cutscenes. That's actually impressive because a lot of these are multiplayer games, a lot of these big ones, but the game about digging a hole is a single player game that still blew up regardless. So that one was certainly impressive. Super Battle Golf, no cutscenes. It's all prioritizing gameplay. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with a story-based game. I like story-based games like Halo, the original Call of Duty run. All these games were good. They were genuinely good. They had cutscenes, they had gameplay, they did a nice mix of them. But that's the thing. There were like maybe 10-minute cutscenes at most. There weren't these 40-minute walk-alongs. They were actually good as games. They stood on them alone as games. You could skip all the cutscenes and you'd still have a perfectly great reaction or great session because you didn't need the cutscenes. The cutscenes were like, nice seasoning. You salt and pepper up the game around the gameplay. You give some extra lore into the gameplay. They weren't meant to be the game, and I think that's what we're missing nowadays. And that's why indie is really blowing up right now. But anyways, let's let him talk a little more because we're already 30 minutes in and I already went on a rant on how bad the modern gaming is and why indie games are killing it, and the fact that this studio calls themselves indie is honestly an insult to actual indie creators.
For years, people have said, well, if you don't like AAA games, just go play indie. Well, what are you gonna do when they just brute force their way in here too? Now you don't have.
Now, and that's the thing. Like, I've been kind of hobby developing video games. I want to release one. But the problem is, I usually fall into some. I'm not sure if it's much of a problem. Like, I don't think I personally fall into like some sort of scope creep thing or anything like that. But a lot of my ideas are single player based and actually have the scope of a story driven experience, and one or two of the ideas I have that aren't so involve multiplayer, so I've had challenges with that and like kind of teetered on them. I'm trying to stick to one now though and just brute force something together, but not saying brute force in like a bad way, but like I'm just trying to force things that don't work together, but I'm trying to make sure I see an idea through.
To wonder anymore. This game movie bullshit. Now they want you to applaud their billion-dollar indie game like they did something special. But hey, maybe I'm just being jaded. Let's take a look at a special moment from the game. Come on, let's give it a shot, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for not showing that. I did not want to see that for the millionth time. I swear, I feel like a child watching this because I feel like I want to look away like I'm, a child that's never seen anything adult in my life. But it's like, no, this in this case, it is genuinely fucking disgusting. You're not seeing two people just simply kiss, even a French kiss or whatever, where you do the whole tongue stuff. No, they just straight up show just jaws and tongue, and you have to fucking control it. It is way worse. Like, like if it was as simple as, oh yeah, we're going to like stick our tongues out, put our lips together, and keep all that stuff inside the mouth. Okay, whatever. But no, we're not even going to show, any flesh. It's just going to be jaws and tongue, and it's like, okay, I don't want to see that, but sure, that's, and we're going to make it a gameplay feature that you have to sit through for at least, 20 seconds before the skip. And I love it. It's like, finally, like, it's not finally, it doesn't say that, but it's like, skip this finally or something like that. And it's like, I feel like the developers at some level understood that this was fucking gross and no one wanted to see this, but still included it anyways because their ego, or it was like some sort of cognitive dissonance where they inherently knew it was disgusting, but like their morality or warped sense of reality thought that it was acceptable to put it in there. It's like, no, I don't want to see that. I can't show you. Let's see if we on to orbit. Did I read that? I like the boat footage. I really like the boat footage. The boat footage is really nice.
No more shots for you. I gotta take as many shots as I give. My liver can't take it anymore. Which reminds me, have you ever seen a MILF shake? Well, you can't.
MILF shake. Ooh. Gamer Subs is making glasses now. That's nice. And not sunglasses or anything like that. I mean, like, drinking glasses. Also, what was that censored thing? And hold up, what was that? Oh. Okay, I think I can kind of make out because I think this was a thumbnail or something from this pink skin, all that. I think I've seen the thumbnail. I can't remember if I watched the video.
Seen a MILF shake? Well, you can at the link below. This was the only safe for work product. Be sure to use code PIMP to get 10% off. Seriously, I don't know how many more of these game movies.
That one he didn't even censor.
Take. At this point, it's not like anyone even takes IGN
Hold up.
serious.
Wait, what is this?
Movies I can take. At this
The IGN review for Mouse PI for Hire, they gave it a 6 out of 10. This is a subtle reference to the game's writing being very cheesy. Nom nom nom. What?
At this point, it's not like anyone even takes
Okay.
IGN serious.
Crazy Frog Arcade Race review. Yeah, I don't. Oh, it was 2006. Okay, this is when it was at least somewhat trusted, I think. Like, I want to think 20 years ago were at least some reviewers that were trustworthy, even though back then there were some seriously doubtful reviewers that clearly weren't gamers. So even then you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Anymore, but they've got enough money to annoy me on a daily basis. Some random freelance writer slaps a 10 out of 10 on this. Now I gotta talk about it. So let's talk about it. Mixtape is a game that's supposed to be...
Literally, the only reason I heard about Mixtape is because of the controversy between, you know, gamers and the game reviewers. That's like, if it wasn't for, you know, some of the streamers I know of playing this game, as well as the whole controversial aspect of this game, I would have never even heard about it. Well, I say controversial. The game itself, I don't think is really all that controversial. It's just bad. You know, it doesn't have like any. I don't think it really makes any controversial political statements or anything like that. I think it's just bad because like the characters are just these, you know, generic rebellious 90s kids that, you know, don't respect authority and learn nothing about respecting authority and call it a day. That's literally the most controversial aspect of the writing, which isn't really inherently political in and of itself. So there's like no real controversial political writing aspect. It's just the response to it existing is really what's a whole controversy. And fair enough, it's a bad game and you have people promoting it like it's a good one. That is the most like quick and dirty way I could describe it. But yeah, because obviously having these flat characters learn nothing about how reality actually works that's just bad writing. That's not anything political. That's just bad writing. And I think that's basically what people have issue with, writing wise at least.
You know, despite the fact that they've spent more on licensed music than most games ever make, because
licensed music that apparently was perpetually licensed, which means the licensed music was way overpaid for. Something, you know, AAA studios don't do. Like, I'm not even sure if they could do them, like, logistically speaking, because of how much of the budget goes towards licensing things like music.
You know, with such generous licensing fees in the industry, right?
Free license Don't Fear the Reaper to use in Prey for $10K back in 2006. Nowadays, the same song would cost $150K. We tried to license songs for recent games in the past 2 to 4 years, and the prices are insane now, so we had to pass. Yeah, and this is 3D realms found at. This alien abduction sequence from Prey is burned into my brain, and mainly because it's one of the best uses of licensed music in the format ever. Yeah. I read that backwards technically, but same idea.
Right now, every scrappy solo dev should be able to pay 400 grand per song, right? And
right.
Forget about that indie charm of sending out expensive merch to all the reviewers
with custom labeling, and not just we slapped a sticker on a generic CD player. Like, it's like burned into the CD branding itself.
content creators.
Which again, that would have to be even more expensive because like this is logography. I don't know. This is branding that's done in a very limited sense, right? Where it's like we're only making, let's say, 100 of these, right? And if it costs $1 million, or if it costs, let's say, $1,000 to make to make the machinery, you have to charge for the machinery itself too. Like this is usually like just a background expense that, oh well, we're going to make a theoretically indefinite amount of these, so all we have to really include in charging for this is, you know, maintenance fees and the occasional upgrade to new technology, you know? Like gamer subs cups are indefinitely made, so the cup tooling to make them is not really burned into the sticker price because it's a negligible expense at scale.
You think putting a gold
Whereas this doesn't have that same scale. It's a limited edition item. It's so a CD that player that would usually cost $100 is now $1,000 to make because it costs $10,000 to tool the machinery for it.
Bar and a goodie bag is a bribe? Well, it is, but they didn't do that. And legally, I need to make this very clear so that I don't get sued.
Very clear.
Billionaire father. I can't afford a lawyer. I'm a butler on a budget.
We're on a budget. That like quite on a budget. Got me. But yeah.
Think they can't be an indie dev because their father is a billionaire?
Video game. Wait.
On a budget. You think they can't be an indie dev because their father.
The video game Mixtape. It's published by Interpeer Interactive. Company founded by Megan Ellison, daughter of Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, who is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. They could okay. Larry Ellison is probably still funding Annapurna as a whole because it's just not that good of a production company. But he's probably looking at it like he has the budget to spend on this, and it's a nice write-off.
Is a billionaire? Listen, just because they've got a team of 30 people and millions of dollars backing them, that doesn't mean they can't be a scrappy indie too.
Right.
Prejudice.
Hundreds of millions of dollars even. Maybe even billions, technically. Depending on your perspective on how it's backed. Like, technically, yeah, billionaire funding a game, you could argue it's backed by billions of dollars, or you could look at its budget of, let's say, $2 to $3 million, or with all the licensed music, probably more like $10 million, or 20, or 30, or 40. It's basically a AAA game at this point. And trying to pose as an indie game, because even if you look at its actual budget, it's still more than an indie game. It's AA at least.
You people can't stand the sight of a young billionaire making their way out of the streets of their gated community. A billionaire that has more.
They're making out the hood with this one, moving to another hood that's also gated. But hey, it's slightly more expensive. It's more expensive hood.
Nothing to work with. All the support money can buy. You don't know how hard it is to have this little to struggle with. We started from the top, now we're at.
We started from the top and now we're at the bottom. Nah, no one will actually suffer financial consequences for these actions because, again, they're funded by billions of dollars.
Off track. Mixtape is not a game. Some people say it.
And that's the thing. Megan Ellison built something off of her father who built something. She built something off of someone else's greatness. She didn't actually become independently great, independently wealthy. It was all funded by someone who did. This goes back to the whole, like, what I was saying earlier with the Fat Electrician, where you know, Hoi Fung, David Tran hired a terrible, you know, executive, started another company for no reason because, you know, nepotism and a desire to basically, you know, improve something that someone else built that didn't need improving. You know, this is kind of the same concept.
Show you this. I hate my dad. I asked for a Ferrari. Got a Cayenne. This is supposed to be 90s nostalgia, but this story was so.
And like I said, this is nostalgic for losers who have dead-end jobs and are probably in prison. Like, literally, the people old enough to remember this time have said, yeah, the people who acted like this are now like in jail, dead, drug addicts, whatever the case may be now. Like, these aren't respectable people who are contributors to society. Now, like I said, if this was a coming of age story where, you know, the person learned, matured over the course of the game, it's like fair enough. You know, if people actually matured over the course of this game instead of, if anything, regressed into immaturity, more immaturity, then sure, I could understand the initial personality traits of these characters, but none of them mature. None of them are like, maybe we are bad people. Maybe we should try to be good people. That doesn't happen in this game, and for that reason, this game is bad. I keep saying game. I mean movie. It's really a movie, basically, just with interactive elements to make it pose as a game because these people couldn't make it as movie producers.
Maybe the past fucking sucked. Maybe we are living in the best times. That's how delusional this game makes me, and I'm tired of calling it a game. They keep cranking out these game movies that no one wants to watch, let alone play. These are failed Hollywood actors that devolve into game movie actors to pretend
they're not even failed Hollywood actors because they're so bad Hollywood wouldn't even give them a chance on even a B-list movie.
All these game movies.
So therefore, they're thrown off to the side in the inferior gaming sphere. You know, and honestly, like, this is just like cyclical. Like, back when film was first made, like, no one wanted to use their actual names or be credited or whatever the case in these early, 1910s films because stage acting was still seen as the like premier acting area. So like film actors were just kind of looked down upon, and now I feel like it's obviously throughout the 50s, 60s, into the 70s, before even games existed, film was able to gain prestige. And now, then when games came on the scene, it was a rinse repeat, especially when it came to like narrative games with, that needed actors coming onto the scene with like PS1 was that. I mean, I guess if you go to like those like Night Trap, uh games like that, I guess technically those would have been the first acted video games. Like, these weren't obviously seen as very respectable because movies were the prime in premiere and stuff. And I feel like that's still kind of a stigma going on today, where games are kind of looked down upon as a lesser entertainment. And again, I think games are integrally or like primarily entertainment. They're heavily reliant by their nature on technology. To some degree, you could argue the same with movies because a movie could be shot on a film camera that is much more mechanical but still technological. But video games are very much complex, technologically reliant things. And so, like, what I'm getting at is you could say, oh, it's a technology thing. And I'd say, yeah, it is technically, but a game specifically is primarily, software. It's primarily a story thing. It's primarily, or not even that, it's primarily entertainment. Like, early games like Pong are primarily entertainment medium. They're not tech medium in that sense. Like how Facebook or Twitter or Amazon is. Or so because they're not reliant. I shouldn't say they're not reliant on technology, but that's not their selling point, is that their technology. Just like a movie's selling point isn't that it was made on a camera.
The actors just won't come out and admit it. You don't want to be a game movie actor. You're game for pay. So stop slapping around joysticks and go back to ruining Marvel movies. My culture is not your.
Ooh, Watch Mojo. I haven't really seen Watch Mojo in quite a while, and this is kind of going back to VTubing, but because I think, dude, I came across on the VTuber wiki that some of the Phase Connect talents, back when that was still a new company, like, they did a Watch Mojo collab thing, and I watched some of it just out of morbid curiosity. Like, I didn't watch it because I thought it was going to be genuine entertainment, and it's like it wasn't good. Like it was even worse than you'd think a Watch Mojo list would be. It was that bad. It was just VTubers making like I'm not going to say inappropriate, but like unnecessary, like kind of like honestly weeb connections to, I think it was anime. Like I said, anime, I like anime. I like Japanese culture. I like all that stuff. But there's like a difference between like, genuine enjoyment of culture and I'll say it, there's a genuine difference between that and being a weeb. If you're like some, like weeb who's like my waifu and all that stuff unironically, it's like get some help. And that was kind of what they were leaning into with that Watch Mojo list, which made it even more cringe than an actual Watch Mojo list.
Welcome to Game Pride Month, twinkle twinkle star. And listen, I'm not saying these people are only in it for the fame. I'm sure they're in it for the money too.
Right.
Have a theatrical release of the whole 3-hour experience. You know it doesn't have that?
What? Scrap it's in 90s. Are they going to like remove the game? What game elements there are for this theatrical release? What? I mean, a theatrical release isn't really as impressive as it was like 20 years ago. And I'm not saying this to diss it, but like, Markiplier's whole Iron Lung thing got a theatrical release. And that's not to diss him or anything like that. That's not to diss anyone. It's just, it's not prestigious in the sense that now that it's more accessible, like to independent creators, like because 20 years ago to get a theatrical release, 30 whatever years ago, you had to be with an established production studio and have them as at least as a partner distributor. Where now it seems like you could just depending on who you know, how to get into contact with people, you could as an independent film completely separate from like the big, what is it, 5 now since Disney bought 20th Century. You could do it completely independent of them, where like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you couldn't. You had to be reliant on a serious distributor. So that being said, this really isn't as impressive as it might seem on the surface, because now it feels like a lot more, it just feels more accessible to get a theatrical release now.
A video game. The only theatrical release happening this year is Street Fighter, and that's because Tammy has Lorac critiques. Mixtape Blue guys. Wait, sorry. Mixtape blew it, guys. So instead, they want every indie game award.
And the 2026 Game of the Year goes to Mixtape. Something that would, like, was it Kotaku that said Mixtape is so controversial that the Game Awards might not even consider it just out of the controversy. Now, that's not to say the Game Awards, since it's just a bunch of nepotism and, industry insiders, it's not to say they would do it. They certainly would consider it. But it's like, it might be such a controversial listing on Game of the Year that they just decide quietly agree not to put it up there, because it's really not worth it, and everyone knows it except the industry plants.
And an Oscar. Your green
and an Oscar.
Listen, stories are great.
That's true. If you could get a theatrical release, it's an Oscar contender.
I seem to be forgetting that this is a video game. And the nice part about a video game is that after the cutscene, you get to play the game. If I cannot play the game, it's not a game anymore, is it?
No.
I'm the type of freak that likes to game and watch. Call me Mr. Game and Watch. Game and Watch? Yeah, I hope they do. I had nowhere else to put this joke, so it goes here. Frick you.
I mean, I'm assuming they're removing the interactivity, so like I said, probably just record a watered down version of what already's watered down, basically. Get rid of all the interactive elements on screen, like the UI elements, and just play it as precisely as possible, at least the parts you can, or have to play rather. And record that in OBS, Release it and call it a day.
Anyway, were you really shocked by the 10 from IGN? Were you really shocked by that rhyme I rhymed?
Honestly, you know what? Maybe a little. Like, they didn't even try to make it look like objective, you know what I mean? Or sorry, subjective. Or yeah, I'd say objective. I mean, it's an opinion, so it's subjective to some point, but they didn't even try to add any objective thought to it. They were like, yeah, we're going to give it a straight up 10. I think even some of the people who criticized had the gall to criticize the perfect game still gave it a 10 because it's like, well, the art style isn't quite my cup of tea or something like that. The game as a whole is, therefore it's a 10. So even when they criticize it, they still give it a high rating.
This is a movie for failures from the 90s that still blame their parents for being born. The last indie game they played.
True. These are not people to look up to. And again, it's like, okay, I get it. Like, as a young teen, whatever, you're rebellious, you're doing stupid things, and maybe a lot of kids were like this in the 90s. But these aren't admirable traits. These characters did not change to be more mature, more responsible individuals. Even after, I think, stating that they were just about to head off to college, you know, or look for work or whatever the case may be. Because this attitude as an adult will not get you anywhere.
Was Cuphead, and they couldn't even beat the tutorial. They're still butthurt from that, so anything with gameplay is gonna get a lower score. Remember when they gave Crimson Desert a 6 out of 10 because they had to think? Look, we all know critical thinking isn't their strong suit.
True.
Sure, people accuse me using AI. But you gotta cut them some slack.
What?
They can't even spell AI. Anymore, the lower the score, the better the game. And
True.
People say it, I don't want Mixtape to fail.
Hold on. Good. Masterpiece. Okay. Amazing. Mediocre. Amazing. Ooh.
The lower the score, the better the game. And before people say it, I don't want Mixtape to fail. I hope they win every trophy at the game.
I honestly hope they do, because it will show just how much of a scam the Game Awards actually are. How much of an inside, circle jerk it is. You know, I hope it does win every award it possibly can, because it will show that the Games Awards are an absolute clown show. And again, I think the Oscars revealed that award shows, generally speaking, are clown shows where a bunch of insiders get together and, conspire behind the scenes on already deciding who's winning and all that. But this will definitely ruin any credibility the Games Awards still actually has.
Game Awards. That way they can melt them down and recoup their dev costs. Fortunately, these awards are only metaphorically worthless, especially when you see how Expedition 33 stole every indie game award despite having a shoestring $10 million budget, large experienced team of developers, and complete support of every gaming journo in the industry. With an ivory tower like that, poor Pizza Tower never stood.
I mean, at least from my understanding, Expedition 33, because I haven't played it, but Expedition 33, I think, was praised by gamers. It was actually worthy of an award.
The chance. What it also had going against it is that it didn't even come out
Not
the same year.
Pizza Tower.
Who wrote this script? Damn, I did.
How dare Crimson Desert take Pizza Tower's awards away?
What even is an indie game anymore? When I think of an indie game budget, I think of $100 to a failed Kickstarter. Unlimited money from your billion-dollar daddy. Seriously.
I'd say a genuine indie game can be no more than $500,000. Maybe $1 million. I think certainly over $1 million. You're pushing into the not AAA, but AA market.
Mixtape is the billionaire's equivalent of giving an iPad to your daughter so she'll leave you the hell alone. All these companies heard we like indie games and are trying to dress up like scrappy upstarts. Can't wait.
They're like, oh, the art style is creative-ish. Maybe. Nah. Is it all that creative? But anyways, they're trying to say the art style looks unique and modern, and therefore it's an indie game because it doesn't look like another soulless, realistic video game. It looks like a creative work or some BS they're going to try to pull.
2026's indie game of the year, Call of Duty 27. And I know I gave
Yeah.
business, but I really love this game and can't wait to play it over and over again for the rest of my life. In fact,
I love the quiet monotone voice, well, quiet relatively speaking, monotone voice that Fleek's given here. It makes it feel real genuine.
Rented out a whole theater so I could enjoy it fully myself.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Game. Who the fuck greenlit this? And I told you not to use that picture. I gotta double check.
Ooh, a bump.
Sure, we're still rolling. Thanks to the flock of pimps. The pimps.
Yeah.
You're about to witness the biggest budgets that have ever graced the front of a shaker cup. Dropping.
Let's see it.
So the countdown starts today. Go bookmark it and mark your calendars for some great big jugs.
All right. Let's go.